So this Jewish guy, encourages a young woman to hide her identity, to use deception, in order to stay as close as she can to the ruler of the nation, and in doing so ends up revealing to everyone just the evil nature of his closest advisor. And if that sounds to you like the background of Borat 2's subsequent movie film, it's also the plot of the biblical book of Esther. Grace and peace, and spoiler alert, my name's Ryan, and this is MOVIEPASStor. I talk about movies and I think theologically about them to get at theological themes. So this week I chose to watch Borat 2, and I was excited to watch it. I enjoyed the first movie. I'll be honest with you. It's not my style of humor. I don't normally, and this is going to be a surprise to no one, right? The pastor, of course, I'm supposed to like, I don't know, erudite and appropriate stuff, but I do. I like intelligent humor, like clever, witty, like British style, and Borat tends to go for like low-hanging fruit. It just seems really cheap and easy, the kind of humor that he's always gone for. And yet, at the same time, I just have to give credit where credit is due to Sacha Baron Cohen, because there is nobody like him doing the things that he does in terms of the art of satire and in terms of hiding his identity, to play these characters to get to reveal truths about people. So I thought that's what we should talk about today. We should talk about the nature of satire, what it means to use lies, to use deception, to use untruths, to tell the truth and to communicate the reality of something that's going on. And of course, we can't talk about that without also talking about the propensity to use lies to tell lies. The propensity to use untruths to exaggerate and manipulate truths and swing elections, which undeniably is also going on in Borat 2, right? So the scenes in which he is talking to Trump supporters, the particular Trump supporters he's talking to are exaggerated people. I mean, not everyone who's voting for Trump is a QAnon conspiracy theorist. And that's not demonstrated in the movie, because he's choosing to show us like the funniest, most extreme moments. He's not choosing to show us times when characters we're supposed to laugh at for how accepting they are of Borat's ridiculousness. Say, hey, you're being ridiculous, stop that. And so there's choices made in terms of what is being shown and what is not being shown. The scene with Giuliani, in which he unbuttons his pants in a hotel room in the presence of Borat's daughter, the character, we have been seeing throughout the whole movie that this character is 15 years of age. Giuliani hasn't. And so whatever she presented herself as to him was presumably someone who was an adult, but also someone who was not his wife. And it just, so there's the reality, right? There are people who are actually like that. This response did take place. And there's the manipulation of the reality. This response was elicited on purpose. Borat in the movie sings a song.
Obama, what we gonna do? Inject him with the Wuhan flu. Inject him with the Wuhan flu. Let's hear it. Dr. Fauci, what we gonna do? Inject him with the Wuhan flu. Inject him with the Wuhan flu.
So it's a racist and a violent song about various enemies of particular ideology, of right-wing ideology, and the desire to give them the coronavirus. And people sing along with the song. And they're singing along with the song because he's intentionally at a rally where people are already in an exaggerated frame of mind. They're among their own. And they don't show the people who don't sing along, They don't show the people who say, hey, wait a second. I can relate to that. When I went to Concordia University, it's a Missouri Synod Lutheran school, all of a sudden Missouri Synod-y ideas got really exaggerated, right? And it was like, are you even a Christian if you don't believe in single predestination? Like, yeah, you are. But if you're living in a place and relating in a place where everybody kind of thinks the same way as you, that radicalizes, and people can say ridiculous things that they might not otherwise seem to believe. Yet there's also truth there. There's something to be revealed when we go to those places and we put a camera and we say, hey, in a particular circumstance, would I be able to say something horribly racist to you? And here you go, yeah, sure, fine. And if so, then that means something. It might not mean exactly what it seems to mean, but it means something. And I have to respect Sacha Baron Cohen for revealing that in us, and increasingly revealing that in our leaders. Borat 2 is less funny than Borat 1, and part of the reason for that is because in Borat 1 we're laughing at Americans. My interpretation is that the generalized conceit of Borat is that he's an unbelievable character. He doesn't act anything like someone actually from Kazakhstan. He is this ridiculous cartoon, and by showing up in the United States and acting like a ridiculous cartoon and people believing it, people knowing so little about their brothers and sisters in other countries that they're just like, yeah, sure, that might be what you're like. It's humorous, and we can laugh at our own ignorance. In Borat 2, it's less funny that we're laughing at our own ignorance because we're largely laughing at the ignorance of people who are making decisions for us, affecting our quality of lives, affecting the quality of lives of primarily the people who are most vulnerable, who have the least self-determination over their lives, and doing so during an election year and during a pandemic and during a time of particular vulnerability. So the jokes don't land the same way. They land with a lot more heartache and a lot less silly easiness. So while it's easy to make a joke about sex and to, you didn't expect for me to make a reference to sex, and it was very explicit, and I did, and so that's going to make you laugh. Again, I have to respect someone who takes the effort to live for 5 days in character in order to ingratiate himself, in order to make that easy sex joke.
Could I stay in your home?
I hope quarantine never end.
Well, let's bring that all around. What about the Bible? And what's the Bible's place for satire like that? What about theology? Can a Christian pretend to be someone that they're not and imagine that some good end will come from that? It reminds me of a verse in Romans. Let us not say what some have slanderously accused us of saying. Let us do evil that good may come, right? Can we use deception to accomplish good? Can we use sarcasm in the name of Jesus? And it's a dangerous line to walk. In some ways I do. I think Jesus used hyperbole, exaggeration, stirring emotional rhetoric. When he says of the Pharisees, you strain out a flea and swallow a camel, which is, if you assume that he said that in Hebrew, you strain out an umala and swallow a gumala. So there's like a pun going on. He's using wordplay and exaggeration to make fun of people, and presumably people who deserve to be made fun of. Then we too have to see that, if we believe Jesus was sinless, and I do, have to see a possibility there that maybe there is a time and a place to make people laugh in order to make a point land. One of the classical, traditional places that we've seen, if there's any place for comedy, it's in the court of the king. We can use comedy to communicate ideas we can't communicate literally, or that won't reach our hearts literally. And that's what brings me to the book of Esther, this fascinating, fascinating biblical book, which is in many circles ignored among Christians, but valued and treasured very highly with our Jewish brothers and sisters. Sacha Baron Cohen, again, is a Jewish person. And so his anti-Semitism in character is performative. He's bringing that out to kind of highlight the nature of anti-Semitism that still exists within our culture and community. And he's doing something pretty consistent with the theological history of interpretation of the book of Esther. Esther is a strange, almost ridiculous story that involves people in disguises, people hiding their identities and their agendas, and it involves a great deal of irony and a great deal of things you didn't expect to happen happening. And so it doesn't read the same way other parts of the Bible read, as like a historical telling. And in the Jewish tradition, it's actually more common to present the story of Esther as a play, as a spiel, and to exaggerate it, and to make it bawdy, and to make it funny, and to play with this really humorous story in which God is never mentioned. In the book of Esther, God and religion at all, apart from like Judaism as an ethnicity, is never referenced in the story, except for in one passage there is a passive voice verb, was turned. That the agenda of Haman, the goals of Haman, what he intended for evil, his plans were turned and flipped on their head, and all of a sudden we ended up in this topsy-turvy world where the evil were punished, the evil didn't prosper, and the good were rewarded, did prosper. And the question is, who turned it? God is never mentioned, but who is it that flipped the script, that turned the fates of the world on their heads in the book of Esther to give us this farcical, this silly, this wonderful and joyous and humorous story? So I think it's appropriate to read Esther as a comedy, to read it as satire, and indeed to engage in the art of satire along with it. So as much as there's a place for these kind of things, we need to be very careful, and we need to be good consumers, and we need to spend time like we've spent today thinking carefully about the dynamite that we are working with when we make people laugh. I hope that made you think, and I hope you come and hear more from me on MOVIEPASStor.
And when in scenes of glory I sing